Hey there, Las Vegas, and welcome to our Vegas Nation Stadium show, where we provide you instant analysis and all the up-to-date information on what's happening with the NFL stadium set to open here in 2020. I'm Ed Graney, sports columnist for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Rick Velotta of the Review-Journal, our man all things on stadium, and Bill Bradley, sports editor of the Review-Journal. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Doing good.
Rick, I'm going to start with you because it's been a while since we updated everyone on the stadium. 1.9 billion, 65,000 seats. That hasn't changed, right?
Not changed.
Okay. You were at the Stadium Authority Board meeting this week, very recently, and they brought us all up to date on what's happening. There were a lot of things in terms of stalled negotiations we thought of going into this meeting that could really put things on the back burner. Before we get into specifics, though, Raiders president Mark Bedane, he had a pretty telling and, let's say, funny way of how one local politician kind of pushed the Raiders towards the middle here so we can get to an agreement. Tell us what Bedane said and who that politician was.
Well, you know, I think you must be talking about the quote that everybody was talking about afterwards, and we're chuckling about when it was said, and that is that, in so many words, that it took Clark County Commissioner Steve Sisolak to kick their asses to get things going on this, because they felt that things had stagnated, that things had stalled. But the fact is that it brought everybody together. It brought all the key people that needed to make some of these decisions into the same room to talk about some of the outstanding issues that were there. And it seemed to have worked because everybody seemed to be happy. It looks like the UNLV Joint-Use Agreement is going to go through. The final details on the community benefits plan were fixed up. So it seems like it's smooth sailing now from here.
Bill, let me ask you, because Rick brought it up with the UNLV lease joint agreement. You know, we had heard before there might be some stalls, and which we kind of imagined would happen. I mean, the NFL, when it comes into these things, they sort of run the program, and you're answering to the NFL, and UNLV had things that they needed and wanted out of this deal. Were you surprised that perhaps there was some stalls in the negotiations or some points there where they couldn't get through? And explain to the people out there, like, why is it so important that the Raiders have a relationship with UNLV? I mean, it is the NFL. Why do they need to be on good terms with this school?
Well, that's all both tied together. I was surprised since the Raiders knew they had to have an agreement with them, because otherwise they couldn't get $750 million out of the state to build the stadium. That was part of the agreement. That was part of SB 1. You touched on already. The fact is, the NFL negotiates things very differently than anybody else. It happens with every NFL stadium negotiation, lease, building of stadiums. They believe they're in control. They believe they run the show.
You worked for them.
I worked for the league for 3 years. They are pretty cocky about themselves.
Right.
And you can say they have a right to be, since they're the most popular sports league in North America.
At the end of the day, the state gave this team $750 million. No matter where you were on the ledger side of that number, it gave them $750 million. They need to deal with this school. And I don't think what the school is offering, and I think you can both speak to this, is outrageous. I mean, if we're talking things like locker rooms and a suite for games and scheduling, I mean, that's a lot of money. Signage. What are these things that would even come up here?
Well, I think one of the other important things about that is that was like one of the three key items that had to be accomplished in terms of this SB 1 approval. They needed to have a home stadium for the Rebels, and this was one of the ways that they could do it.
Bill, follow up there. Why, you worked for this league, and you put it best. When this league does something, they run it. Mm-hmm. I mean, they feel that you should be privileged and honored to be one of 32. And I think there's actually some validity to that argument, because you are special as one of 32. On one hand, look, at the end of the day, I cover UNLV football games. They announce 18. There might not be 15 in the house. So I'm not so sure, really, the support behind them in terms of football. But do you think it could have done the Raiders damage if they really went to the wall with these guys and perhaps took stuff away that looked a little petty?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
The idea that is, it would have caused a domino effect. I think it would have been rekindled memories of the Raiders negotiating badly back in the Al Davis days. I think it would have brought some distrust about the Raiders. It would have caused Sam Boyd to still be in the play and to have those 18,000 or more like 12,000 seat home games. And the other factor is, I mean, you have UNLV already planning on playing games there. Well, they have Cal salivating at getting a home game, as you reported. Well, they're looking forward to 60,000 people for a UNLV home game. Well, that, sir, goes by the wayside if that happens.
How does overnight the perception of your town change? I'm going to say globally, because I think it's a worldwide league anyway. It's not just in the United States anymore. How does the perception change for this town once this thing is up?
Despite all of the issues the NFL has, and there's no question the NFL has lots of issues, it's still perceived as the #1 sports league in North America. And so big that London wants in the game. Mexico City and Central America wants in the game. What it does is it makes it seem, it makes your perception of your city seem larger than it might be. But the fact is, you're in a club with, say, the largest cities in the country, and it's okay to you to rub shoulders with them. You're good enough. Las Vegas can have all the goodwill, all the perception that we're a large metro city, but that takes it to the next level, not just in the nation, but globally too.
Rick, also yesterday, they spoke to the community benefits plan. For those out there who might not know specifically what that is, explain the community benefits plan and why it was important to move forward with that part of it.
Well, one of the commitments that was made in terms of the passage of Senate Bill 1 was to make sure that minority contractors, this includes minority groups, women, gay and lesbian, veterans, all kinds of different groups that gives them the opportunity to be a contractor, a subcontractor for things. That includes the construction of the stadium, and it also includes provisioning materials for the construction. It also includes things that are going to be sold at concession stands, and it also includes employment during the concessions on game days and event days. One of the things that the legal experts from the Raiders, Dan Ventrelli, said was, this is probably the best community benefits plan ever constructed. Well, that says quite a bit right there.
Now, my guess is in 30 years, if all three of us are here, we'll be eating tapioca pudding, living with pigeons in my house. But with this land development dedication, while we're living with pigeons, the Raiders, with the dedication, will still be here, right? Go over this land dedication, because this kind of locks this team in. Because, Bill can talk to this as well. This has been a team that's kind of like gets a little antsy every once in a while, and they're moving, to LA and back to Oakland. And, so hopefully this land dedication, you can talk about what that is, locks these guys in. And, before we go with the pigeons, we'll be able to cover some seasons.
Well, the way that the agreement was structured is that the Raiders have to purchase the land. They need to build the stadium. They're in charge of building the stadium. Right. But as soon as it's done, it gets turned over to the authority. Well, people would say, why? Why would the team do that? Well, because they get free rent out of the whole deal. But the fact is that even though it's an asset that's being built by the team, it's going to belong to the public through the stadium authority.
Well, update, and I know fans out there want to know these few things. Have you seen or read anything, and I don't think you have yet, but let us know, where you don't believe this will be done for the 2020 season? First question, and back into that, let fans know when you believe things like the NFL draft, specifically a Super Bowl, I think that's what everyone's really worried about, will be here in Las Vegas.
Well, let me backtrack to the first question you had. I just talked to a reader today on the phone, and the person said, what can we do to keep the Raiders out of here?
My wife's calling again. Told her not to call, Rick.
we got to do everything we can to keep the Raiders out of here. I said, I told him, I think you need to come to grips with the reality. The Raiders are coming here. They've bought the land. The Raiders are going to build the stadium. The Raiders are doing community outreach. They're giving jerseys to Clark County high school football teams.
And they're selling a lot of jerseys.
They're selling a lot of jerseys at Raider image stores, but they have opened 2 in this market. The fact is, you can't drive up and down Sahara without seeing Welcome Raider signs, without TV ratings, as expected, are among the top things on every week on TV now, Raiders games in this market. It just come to grips. They're coming. As for predictions when the other big
draft,
events are,
Super Bowl,
I'm
stuff like
saying
that?
the draft will be 2020 or 2021. Okay. I think they'll either have the draft here going into the first season, or have the draft here after the first season. Okay.
One of the things that Mark Bedane said during his short report at the Stadium Authority Board meeting yesterday was that, yes, we have spoken to the NFL about the Super Bowl, and he said that we may know as early as May as to when we're going to be in the sequence.
Yeah. Rick, okay, a couple days before Christmas of 2017, so take the people through, until we talk to them again, take the people through the next steps. Seems like the more shows we do, the closer we're getting to shoveling the real shovel in the ground instead of the ones Sisolak had, opening this thing up.
Well, there were actually 4 items that were discussed at the meeting yesterday. They didn't vote on any of them, but the fact is that they are kind of lining things up to make the final approvals on some of the different aspects of some of the details that have to go before they make a stadium development agreement. That's the big push, is to get that stadium development agreement signed, because that gives the Raiders carte blanche to do whatever they need to do in terms of construction at the site. So one of the things that Steve Hill did, very wise decision, I think, was to set up an extra meeting in January. So there
Just
will
what
be,
you want, Rick.
yeah, exactly.
Have more of those.
I
I
live
hope
for
there's
those
more
types of
public
things.
comment with these meetings.
But they'll have 2 meetings in January, at which they will do a lot of the preliminary decision making, maybe make a few approvals on some of these preliminary documents that lead up to the stadium development agreement, and then presumably in the first meeting, or the only meeting in February, that's when the final deal will be signed, and that's when everybody can start throwing parties.
That's when the
Stadium development agreement signed.
the whole begins.
That's
You-
right.
They're out there. They
That's
can
right.
actually go on there and actually begin to dig.
I would not be surprised that it would be a very big hole soon after that, right?
Right, and the thing is that we all know that this process takes time, but time is something they really don't have a lot of if they want to get it finished by 2020. They got an extension in terms of how long the stadium authority can act on these things. It goes into about the middle of April.
Your final thoughts?
I think that the process is looking more optimistic than ever on this. I think some of us thought that, maybe this UNLV thing could be a hiccup. We weren't sure. And certainly the Board of Regents has to review this. And
I would think they'll
approve
be
it.
okay with it.
I would think so too, but you never know. This is
Wasn't it kind of the chancellor and president's job to give them something they're going to pass?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we'll see what that looks like in early January. The regents will be meeting to specifically look at that agreement. They won't vote on it the first time, but then later in January they will. So I think that that's a big hurdle that was cleared. This community benefits plan was something that was on a lot of people's minds. That seems to have been cleared. So it looks like smooth sailing until that meeting in February.
Bill, final thought?
Interesting, we didn't hear anything in terms from the league that they were worried about any of this. I think
I
things
don't know if
went,
we ever heard from them.
I think the NFL was very happy how all of this went, and they did not step in, and I think this was going along the track they were very happy to have.
If you find my family $750 million, we will be very happy.
They were,
Somehow I'm going to have a happy homestead.
This was
Someone
going
gives me
very
that.
smooth through the league, I would
Going
say.
very for them. All right. Rick Velotta, Bill Bradley, thanks very much. Always awesome information. Great job. So there you have it. We really hope you enjoyed the show, all the information about the stadium. Reminder, stay to Vegas Nation. Keep your eyes here on all Vegas Nation shows, reviewjournal.com. There's no one better in this town than Rick Velotta reporting this story. All your Raiders and stadium updates. Michael Gelkin has the Raiders covered left to right. I'm with them each week. Heidi Fang, Vegas Nation, and reviewjournal.com. I'm Ed Graney. We'll talk to you next time about the stadium. Thanks for watching.